Hello students, welcome to this another discussion video on the topic financial assets at fair value. At the end of this lesson, you should be able to determine the various purpose of investments, identify various types of investments, explain the nature of financial assets, determine the classification of financial assets, and measure the financial assets based on their classification. Let us start our discussion by defining first what investment is and identify also the reasons or the purpose of investing. So investments are assets which are not directly identified with the operating activities of an entity and occupy only an auxiliary relationship to the central revenue producing activities of the entity. Based on the definition, we can say that investments are only there if the company has excess cash. So pag mayroong excess cash ang company, they may decide to invest it into something because in financial management, hindi mabuti na marami kang cash na ikikip. No? It's not advisable and it is not practical to hold so much money because when you're holding money, it entails cost to the entity. So that is why kapag mayroong excess na cash ang company, they will decide, no, usually they will decide to invest it into something. And ano bang reason, no, bakit mag-i-invest or bakit ini-invest ng excess na cash? So we have here the purposes of investments. So investments are assets held by an entity for accretion of wealth or regular income through interest, dividends, royalties, and rentals. So ibig sabihin, isa sa mga primary reason, no, kung bakit tayo mag-i-invest is gusto nating mas tumami pa yung ating pera. So in what way na dadami ang ating pera? That is through receiving no regular income. So depende yan kung ano ang iyong anong type ng investment meron ka. Say for example, if you invested in bonds, so you would expect that you'll be receiving interest no based on what was agreed no or based on what was written in the agreement which we call yung bond indenture. Or if you're investing into stocks, then you might be receiving dividends na from the corporation that you invested in. Pwede rin namang for capital appreciation. So as in the case of investments in land and real estate, held for appreciation and direct investments in gold, diamonds, and other precious commodities. So isa rin ito no sa reason na gusto nating mas mataas or tumaas pa ang value ng ating asset. No? Say for example, when you purchase a land, usually pag land, di ba, nag-appreciate ang value niyan. So if you purchase it now at 20,000, maybe 5 years or 10 years later, its value will really increase na. So in that way, you are appreciating no, the value of what you have now. So that's capital appreciation. So kung hindi ka naman into land kasi mas parang malaki masyado yung amount na i-invest natin, pwede naman dito ka sa mga precious stones or common, no? Ang common na investment is in the form of gold. So bili ka ng jewelry, yung mga tunay na gold, no, yung pwede nating masangla if in case nangangailangan tayo. Because gold also, no, its value will also appreciate over time. So that's why it's a very good investment also. So another reason or purpose of investment is for ownership control. As in the case of investment in subsidiaries and associates. So if you wish to control an entity, you might be interested to purchase ordinary shares of that entity so that you will have the maturity or the majority shares na of that corporation. So in that way, pag ikaw yung majority owner or majority na stockholder or shareholder, then you have the chance of voting yourself to be a board of director. Thus, of course, kung ganun yung mangyayari, meron ka ng influence or meron ka ng control over an entity or corporation. Another is for meeting business requirements, as in the case of sinking fund, preference share redemption, plant expansion fund, and other non-current fund. So ito naman, in relation to mga funds, no, yung mga cash na sinet aside natin for the purpose of mga long-term, no, mga long-term na purposes, like ito sinking fund. So kung nandoon sa inyong agreement na yung bonds na inisyo mo, dapat meron siyang sinking fund para in case na dumating na yung maturity date ng bonds, meron agad pera na magagamit pang bayad doon sa mga bondholders. So yan, no, that is for long-term na purpose. So to meet business requirements. So as you have agreed. Another is it is for protection, as in the case of interest in life insurance contract in the form of cash surrender value. So ito siya class. This is an insurance na ang beneficiary is ang corporation mismo. So usually ang ginagawa ito for mga key personnel or mga employees holding key position sa entity, and parang magiging kawalan, no, kapag namatay sila kasi mawawalan ng brilliant mind ang corporation. So to compensate for the loss, corporations may insure, no, the person, but the beneficiary is the corporation. So whatever benefit, no, na makukuha out of that life insurance ay mapupunta sa corporation. So iba naman yung life insurance na ang beneficiaries ay ang heirs talaga ng empleyado. So ito siya, ang beneficiary is ang corporation mismo. So we have your examples of investment. So we have trading securities, investment in equity securities, investment in bonds, investment in associate, investment in subsidiary, investment property, investment in fund, and investment in joint venture. So of this listed class, what will be discussed in our subject ACC 124 or these items, no, yung trading securities, investment in equity securities, investment in bonds, investment in associate. This one is not anymore discussed here. This one, possibly nating mahabol ito. Supposedly this is included in the subject, as well as investment in fund. Investment in joint venture ay sa susunod na accounting or sa higher na accounting subject. So we will be discussing each of this, no, later. So let's proceed muna to the statement classification. So how do we classify investments in our financial statements? So basic natin, di ba? Kasi yung investment natin, since we consider it as asset, so sakto lang na yung classification niya would be either current or non-current. So kailan ba natin masasabi na current ang ating investment? So the investment is classified as current when by their very nature, they are readily realizable and are intended to be held for not more than 1 year. So pag sinabing readily realizable, ibig sabihin nito, we can convert it into cash immediately. Na? So parang isang transaction na lang, this particular asset can be converted already to your cash, no? The most liquid na asset natin, yung cash. And dapat yung intention mo is just to hold that investment for not more than 1 year. So you really have the intention of selling it anytime within the next 12 months. The other one is non-current. So pag hindi nakapasa doon sa definition ng current, so most probably, i-consider na natin siya as non-current. So non-current ang investment when they are intended to be held for more than 1 year or they are not expected to be realized within 12 months after the end of the reporting period. So yan, no? Pag hindi talaga siya mako-convert into cash within the next 12 months from the reporting date, and you are or you have the intention of holding it for more than 1 year, then you have to consider it as non-current. When we discuss about investments, hindi talaga mawawala yung discussion about financial instruments. Why? Because most of the investments that we have is in a form of financial instrument. So ano ba tong financial instrument? No? Ano ba yung characteristics ng financial instrument? So in a financial instrument, there must be a contract. So merong kontrata, and that contract will have at least 2 parties involved. And itong kontrata na to will result to this, no? So it will give rise to a financial asset of one party and a financial liability or equity instrument of another party. Say for example, um, ang isang corporation ay nag-issue ng ordinary shares, no? Nagbenta siya ng ordinary shares. So if you can still recall in your basic accounting, 'di ba pag merong issuance ng ordinary shares ang corporation, say for example that was issued for cash, 'di ba magde-debit tayo ng cash and magke-credit tayo ng share capital, or in this case, yung ordinary shares natin. So that is in the point of view of the corporation. Now, sa point of view naman ng investor or slash shareholder, 'di ba? Ang mangyayari ay nakatanggap siya ng financial asset. No, anong financial asset na natanggap niya? Yung ownership niya, no, sa corporation kasi bumili siya. So meron siyang investment. Now, such investment, of course, i-debit niya yan kasi asset niya yan. And then, magka-credit siya ng cash. So, yung investment na yun, we can consider that as a financial asset in the point of view of the investor. Whereas yung ordinary shares, that is considered equity instrument of the corporation issuing no, the shares na yung ordinary shares na yan. So therefore in yung transaction related to issuance of shares, we can consider that no as yung equity security na yan, we can consider it as a financial instrument because it has consequently or it has resulted to financial asset na hinahawakan or pinanghahawakan ng investor and an equity instrument of the corporation. So meron siyang ordinary shares, no, which is an example of an equity instrument. So since dito sa definition ng financial instrument, napag-uusapan yung term na financial assets. So let's try to define, let's try to understand ano ba yung nature ng financial assets na yon. So as I've said kanina, doon sa example, di ba, dalawang point of view yun. Point of view ng corporation issuing the ordinary shares and the point of view of the investor who purchased or who availed of the shares issued by the corporation. So in this particular topic class, we are accounting actually in the point of view of the investor. So tayo yung merong financial asset, no? Meron tayong financial asset. So ano nga ba yung financial asset? So financial asset is any asset that is cash. So ibig sabihin pala pag sinabi mong cash, financial asset 'yon. Or a contractual right to receive cash or another financial asset from another entity. So this one, this second bullet here is actually referring to your receivables. Your trade accounts receivable, your notes receivable, your loans receivable, and your bonds receivable. So in short, ito dito, this is referring to receivables, no? Contractual right. Meron kang contractual right to receive cash. Kasi nga may pagkakautang siya sa'yo. So meron kang kokolektahin from this particular entity. So in that case, such items here, yung mga receivables na to, we consider them as financial asset because we have this contractual right to receive cash. Another is financial asset na is a contractual right to exchange financial instrument with another entity under conditions that are potentially favorable. So example nito will be options or warrants. As I've mentioned before, this one is related to an instrument, equity instrument given to existing, for example, no, existing na shareholder. So kung ika-existing ka na ng shareholder, kapag ang corporation ay mag-i-issue ng bagong mga shares, priority ka no, na mabigyan ng mga bago na shares. So we call that in accounting and basic accounting as preemptive right of the shareholder. So pag meron kang ganun, meron kang preemptive right, so pag meron kang isang share, so bibigyan ka nila ng isa ring share warrants. So ano bang kagandahan ng share warrants na yun? So yung share warrants na yun, nakaspecify doon ang presyo na pwede mong, ang yung purchase price, no? The purchase price at which you can buy the shares of the corporation. And usually, that purchase price is usually lower compared to the market price. So in that case, in that way, mako-consider natin siya ng potentially favorable. Kasi nga, mas malaki or mas maliit yung presyo or mas maliit yung purchase price ng share kung gagamitan mo ng share warrants. Unlike doon sa kung bibili ka na agad-agad doon na sa market kung wala kang gagamitin na share warrants. So that's why it's potentially favorable kasi most probably no kung mas maliit or mas um, maliit yung purchase price ng yung shares using the warrants as compared to the market, then most probably i-exercise yan ng holder ng warrants na yan. So another is financial asset DI is an equity instrument of another entity. So example natin kanina na yung ordinary shares or yung preference shares. So all of this, we consider this as financial asset. And actually, we have already discussed no, yung cash, na-discuss natin yung mga receivable. So ang hindi pa lang natin na-discuss sa mga financial assets ay ito na lang dalawa. Itong third bullet and yung fourth bullet natin. So which are not considered financial assets. So take note that physical assets such as inventories or property, plant, and equipment are not considered financial assets. So hindi sila financial asset. Like for example, inventory, wala kang magiging contractual right to receive payment, no? Or to collect from the from the other party kung wala pang bentahan na nangyari. So therefore, we cannot consider inventories as financial asset. The same thing also with property, plant, and equipment. No? Kasi 'di ba gagamitin mo man yan sa operations mo para maka-earn ka ng revenue. So most probably, walang magbibigay sa'yo ng amount no or ng cash, for example, in exchange of PPE in an ordinary course of business. Kasi usually PPE, gagamitin mo yan pang produce ng goods tsaka services mo no, para sa mga clients mo. Okay? So, another thing na hindi considered as financial asset is yung mga intangible assets. So, ito yung mga assets na hindi natin nakakita. Na like for example, your copyright, your patent, your trademark. So ito mga intangible assets na to or not also considered financial asset because for example, kung meron kang copyright, hindi naman automatic na makaka-receive ka agad no ng amount from other parties unless nga walang benta na nangyari. So hindi siya automatic na pwede ka na manghingi kung meron kang copyright, for example. So there must be sale pa na mangyayari and that you have to recognize a receivable, of which receivable is your financial asset, but not the intangible asset that you're using in order to have that particular sales. Prepaid expenses also are not considered financial assets, no? Because economic benefit is the receipt of goods or services rather than the right to receive cash or other financial assets. So that's why it's not really considered a financial asset kasi um, wala ka namang ina-anticipate na cash no galing sa prepaid expense. Most probably you're going to use that, you're going to consume that, no? Mga prepaid expenses na yan. Another is leased assets. These are not also financial assets because the control of these assets does not give rise to a present right to receive cash or another financial asset na from another entity. Okay, so we have here forms of financial assets. Kasi we're talking about investments. Na? So, ano ba yung form ng financial assets? So just take note that your financial asset can be in the form of equity security or yung tinatawag natin na debt security. Okay? So, ano-ano ba ito sila? So, pag sinabi natin equity security class, it encompasses any instrument representing ownership shares and rights, warrants or options to acquire or dispose ownership shares at a fixed or determinable future or determinable price. So, ibig sabihin lang nito, pag sinabi nating equity security, this actually represents ownership interest in an entity. So kaya ang examples niya ay ordinary shares, preference shares, and rights or options to acquire ownership shares. So ibig sabihin, posible pala na yung investment mo is in the form of equity security. Like for example, bumili ka ng ordinary shares ng isang corporation. Say, gusto mong maging investor ng Jollibee, for example. So, bumili ka ng shares ng Jollibee. So, you are actually holding an equity security in the form of ordinary shares. So, yan, no, yung equity security. Another form of financial asset is ito. Pwede namang debt security. So, ano naman yung debt security? Debt security is any security that represents a creditor relationship with an entity. So parang merong pagkakautang sa iyo yung entity. Again, we are accounting in the point of view of the investor. No? So not the entity issuing the shares or issuing the bonds. No, we're accounting in the point of view of the corporation or the entity na nag-invest. No? So ana. So therefore, pag ikaw ay nag-invest sa debt security, ikaw ay magiging creditor ng entity na yon. Pag ikaw ay nag-invest sa equity security, ikaw ay magiging shareholder sa entity na yon. So going back to debt security, ano bang kaibahan ng debt security tsaka equity security? So take note class at dito sa debt security, meron siyang maturity date and maturity value. Whereas ang ating equity security, wala yang maturity date. So wala siyang nakaspecify na maturity date. Unlike dito sa debt security natin. So ano ba yung mga examples ng debt security? So you have corporate bonds, you have mga government securities, yung BSP treasury bills natin, yung commercial papers. So these are examples of debt securities, including this. Okay. Now, what about this one? No? Preference share with mandatory redemption date at the option of the holder. So take note, 'di ba, supposedly pag sinabi mong preference shares, dapat equity 'yun. Bakit ba nasama dito sa debt security ang preference shares? So take note class, na kapag yung preference shares, meron siyang eto 'no, mandatory na redemption date. Pag meron siya naka-state na redemption date, it cannot be considered anymore as an equity security. Why? Because ang equity security talaga wala yang maturity date. So pag yan nalagyan ng the redemption date, itong preference shares na ito, then this preference shares is classified now as a debt security rather than an equity security. Let us now proceed to the classification of financial assets. Take note class na importante itong classification ng financial assets. Bakit? Because ang classification ng financial asset will tell us kung paano natin i-account ang isang investment or ang isang financial asset. So there are three classifications of financial assets. So one, we have the financial assets at fair value through profit or loss. So ito yung mga financial assets na i-measure natin at fair value. Tapos itong line na to, itong through profit or loss, this is actually referring to ano yung ating gagawin sa changes no, sa fair value. 'Di ba kasi since ang financial asset mo ay i-measure mo at fair value, so there is a possibility that every reporting period magkaiba no, or magpa-fluctuate yung fair value mo. So etong phrase na to, yung true profit or loss, this will tell us kung saan natin i-report yung difference ng fair value. So in this case, in the first bullet, ang changes ng fair value natin ay i-report natin sa profit or loss. I hope we can still recall the discussions in basic accounting. 'Di ba sabi natin yung statement of comprehensive income, dalawa ang components nun or dalawa yung composition nun. Una, the first group is what you call yung income statement or ang tawag natin dyan are profit or loss statement. The other one is yung other comprehensive income or yung OCI. So itong classification na to, financial assets at fair value through profit or loss, lahat ng changes sa fair value ay i-report natin sa profit or loss or sa income statement as we know in accounting 1. So just take note also that both equity securities and debt securities can be classified as financial assets at fair value through profit or loss. So later, isa-isahin natin ito kung kailan ba maka-classify as financial assets at fair value through profit or loss ang equity security tsaka yung debt security. The next classification is yung financial assets at fair value through other comprehensive income. So again, balikan lang natin yung statement of comprehensive income. 'Di ba? Two parts yun. One is the income statement or the profit or loss statement. Then yung sa baba, no, yung the second group ng mga changes no or ng operations natin for the period is related to other comprehensive income. So kung ganito yung classification ng ating financial assets, any changes no, in the fair value of this particular financial asset shall be reported through OCI. So hindi siya doon sa profit or loss, kundi dito sa other comprehensive income. So later we also know what's the difference. No? Ano bang kaibahan kung doon siya ma-report sa profit or loss or kung doon siya ma-report sa other comprehensive income. Take note also that this particular classification can either be equity security or debt security. So ano ibig sabihin? Meaning, if you're holding an equity security, posible no, na maklasify siya as FA at FB through OCI. Or kung debt security yung hawak mo, so pwede pa rin, no, posible pa rin na maklasify siya as financial assets at fair value through OCI. So again, later malalaman natin kung kailan ba makaklasify ang financial asset as FA at FB through OCI. The last classification is yung financial assets at amortized cost. So this is applicable only for debt securities. So we'll also have a separate discussion for this particular topic when we reach investment in bonds. Kasi usually sila yun yung investment in bonds ang usually mapapall under dito sa third na classification, which is financial assets at amortized cost. So let us now proceed to measurement. So unahin na natin itong initial measurement ng financial assets. So according to PFRS 9, lahat ng financial assets except for those classified as financial assets at fair value through profit or loss shall be measured initially at fair value plus transaction cost. So pag sinabi nating transaction cost is or those costs which are directly attributable to the acquisition of financial assets. So example nito yung commission ng brokers or mga taxes involved doon sa transactions involving the purchase of your financial asset. So again, ang sinasabi ng PFRS 9, lahat ng financial assets ay i-measure siya initially at fair value plus transaction cost, except for those assets or for those financial assets which are classified as financial assets at fair value through profit or loss. So kung babalikan natin yung classifications ng ating financial assets, 'di ba? Ito yung tatlo. So, ibig sabihin, itong second bullet, yung financial assets at fair value through OCI, tsaka yung financial assets at amortized cost, kapag i-measure mo siya initially, ang basis mo is ang fair value nila plus transaction cost. So, i-capitalize natin yung transaction cost. However, kapag ang classification ng financial assets mo ay itong first bullet, that's financial assets at fair value through profit or loss, ibig sabihin class, yung transaction cost natin ay i-expense outright natin. So how do we measure initially our financial assets if they are classified as financial asset at fair value through profit or loss? So ang basis natin sa initial recognition is yung fair value ng asset. Tapos ang transaction cost, kung meron ka mang na-incur, i-expense natin yan outright. Okay, so you have here again, if the financial assets are classified as financial assets at fair value through profit or loss, transaction cost shall be expensed outright. Now, what about subsequent measurement ng mga financial assets? So PFRS 9 provides that after initial recognition, an entity shall measure a financial asset at. So mamimili ka na lang dito sa tatlo. And based on the circumstances at hand and depende rin sa applicability ng hawak mong financial asset. So pwedeng fair value through profit or loss or FVPL. Pwede naman fair value through other comprehensive income or FPOCI, or pwede rin namang amortized cost. So let's proceed to this. So we are now in this first item among the classification of financial assets. So ito yung pinakauna nasa listahan. That financial assets may be classified at fair value through profit or loss. So let's try to identify ano-ano ba yung type or klase ng financial assets na dapat nating i-measure at fair value through profit or loss. So actually, there were 4 items being listed here na mga financial assets na pwede nating i-measure, hindi pwede, dapat nating i-measure at fair value through profit or loss. So una na sa listahan is this one, yung financial assets held for trading or trading securities, na ang sinasabi ay kapag ang financial asset natin ay mako-consider natin as trading security, by requirement, so ibig sabihin, it is really required by the standard na dapat i-classify sila at fair value through profit or loss. So again, kapag trading security yan or held for trading, by requirement, you have no choice but to present it or to measure it at fair value through profit or loss. Ano ba yung mga trading securities? Now, let's try to define what a trading security is. So, yung mga financial assets held for trading, these are financial assets held for trading if it is acquired principally for the purpose of selling or repurchasing it in the near term to generate short-term gains or profits. So ito yung sinasabi ko na um, entities, no, ang posibleng goal nila or reason nila kung bakit sila bumili ng isang share, for example, is para makatake advantage lang sa fluctuation ng prices. So, for example, binili nila at a lower amount, tapos biglang tumaas yung presyo ng shares na binili nila, then they're going to sell it. So, if the intention of holding the security is parang ganun, no, bibili lang siya, tapos ang pinaka-goal niya ay to take advantage of the fluctuations in price. So pag tumaas ng presyo, ibibenta na niya. So kung ganoon yung klase no ng intention mo sa paghawak ng financial asset, then such financial asset is considered as held for trading or trading security. And therefore, kapag held for trading, dapat ang classification niya ay yung financial assets at fair value through profit or loss. Another is held for trading siya if on initial recognition, it is part of a portfolio of identified financial assets that are managed together and for which there is evidence of a recent actual pattern of short-term profit taking. So take note of the word short-term na profit taking. So hindi mo talaga siya binili for the purpose na makareceive ka ng dividends or what, but your intention really is to take profits in a shorter period. No, when of course the circumstances favors the entity. So like for example, tumaas ang presyo, then you just have to take the profit, no, para ma-realize mo na yung profit. Or if it is a derivative, except for a derivative that is a financial guarantee contract or a designated and an effective hedging instrument. So this one, we'll just leave this, no, para sa next natin ng mga topics. So balikan natin yung listahan no ng ating mga financial assets which should be measured at fair value through profit or loss. So tapos na tayo dito sa number 1. So again, kapag ang financial asset ay na-classify as held for trading or trading security, so by requirement, so pag sinabing by requirement, required talaga ng standard na dapat i-measure ito at fair value through profit or loss. Second, all other investments in quoted equity instruments. No? So lahat ng investments na quoted in equity instruments. So investments in equity instruments which are quoted. Ano bang ibig sabihin ng quoted? No? So pag sinabing quoted class, ibig sabihin itong stock or itong share na to ay binebenta siya, actively traded siya in the stock exchange or in the stock market. No, yung alam mo that this particular share is pwede mong mabenta or mabili anytime, no? Because it is traded in the stock market. So pag sinabing quoted price, no, pag naka-pertain yan sa equity or sa share, it is expressed actually in peso. So pag sinabing 10 per share, so meaning it means na 10 pesos per share. Pero pag iyan ay naka-pertain naman sa bond or debt security, usually it is expressed in percentage. No, percentage of the face amount of the bond. So for example, pag sinabi nating 90%, 90, no? Tapos bonds yung pinag-uusapan. So, ang 90 doon, ibig sabihin, 90% of the face value of the bonds. So, again, nabalikan lang natin, pag lahat ng investments na equity instrument which are quoted shall be measured at fair value through profit or loss by consequence, no? So, by consequence siya. So, since it's quoted, then consequently, dapat i-measure natin at fair value through profit or loss. The third item is itong financial assets that are irrevocably designated on initial recognition at fair value through profit or loss. So itong number 3 class, it is already the option or at the option of the entity. Like for example, itong security na to or itong investment, itong financial asset na to, supposedly mo qualify sana doon as financial asset at OCI, no? Or baka posible siyang mo qualify as at amortized cost. Kaso lang, the entity, by its option, no? Option niya talaga na dinesignate niya as financial asset at fair value through profit or loss. So siya mismo at its own will, siya yung nag-elect or nag-designate ng financial asset na to as financial asset at fair value through profit or loss. So that's irrevocable na designation. Or yung tinatawag nating fair value option. So pwede rin pala no, na ikaw mismo ang mag-designate sa iyong financial assets no, as fair value through profit or loss. So be classified as fair value through profit or loss. And then the fourth one is that all debt investments that do not satisfy the requirements for measurement at amortized cost and at financial assets at fair value through OCI. So by default. So if it will not qualify to any of those two classification mentioned, katong ginatawag natong amortized cost o katong financial assets at fair value through OCI, then walay choice. So by default, it shall be classified as financial assets at fair value through profit or loss. So again, those are the three or the four scenarios na makaingon ta nga kani nga mga items ato silang i-classify as financial assets at fair value through profit or loss. Okay? So we've discussed that already. So trading securities are debt and equity securities that are purchased with the intent of selling them in the near term or very soon. So that's for yung sa held for trading. Okay, so let's proceed now to the second, no? Second natin na classification, yung investment or financial assets at fair value through all or comprehensive income. So specifically, let us focus on equity investment lang muna, no? Yung mga shares lang na investment natin. So as per PFRS 9, at initial recognition daw, an entity may make a revocable election to present in other comprehensive income subsequent changes in the fair value of an investment in equity instrument that is not held for trading. So, if we will try to recall what we have discussed earlier, di ba sabi doon na kapag held for trading, wala kang option. Dapat ang pag held for trading yan, automatic, i-consider mo talaga yan as fair value through profit or loss. But if ang investment mo, if yung financial asset mo ay hindi naman held for trading, as per PFRS 9, you have the option, no? Pwede kang gumawa ng irrevocable election na itong financial asset na to, itong investment na to, ay ipipresent ko in OCI. So, bale, i-classify ko as number 2, yung fair value through OCI. So, the amount recognized in OCI shall not be reclassified to profit or loss in any other circumstances. So, this one, makikita natin ito during the illustration. No? Kasi sabi niya dito, 'Di ba, dalawa man yun, profit or loss tsaka OCI. So if you have decided to present the changes in the fair value through OCI, forever na yan. Hindi pwedeng bawiin. So that is why kapag merong mga, for example, no, binenta mo yung financial assets mo na na-classify as fair value through OCI. So, if that is the case, no, hindi ka pwedeng mag-report ng gain sa profit or loss mo. Instead, you will be crediting that to your retained earnings. So later we will see, no, in the illustration application of this particular provision in the standard. So however, on the recognition, yung i-recognize na natin, like for example, is a sale na, no, mamaligya na ta sa tuang investment, the amount may be transferred to equity or retained earnings. So still, dili siya moagi sa profit or loss. Diretso na siya sa retained earnings. Also, ato ani siyang i-illustrate later, no? So the last item, yung last classification is yung debt investment at amortized cost. So PFRS provides that a financial asset shall be measured at amortized cost if both of the following conditions are met. So take note class, no, both dapat itong dalawang to masatisfy para ma-measure natin or i-classify natin siya as debt investment at amortized cost. So take note ha, this is only applicable for debt investment. If we will talk about amortized cost, out na dyan yung equity investment. So only debt investment applicable ang amortized cost. So ano na yung mga conditions na dapat i-met, no, para ma-measure natin yan at amortized cost. So first, that the business model is to hold the financial asset in order to collect contractual cash flows on specified date. So it talks about business model. So ito na talaga yung ginagawa mo, no, na bumili ka ng, for example, bumili ka ng bonds, no? Investment in bonds. So your intention is to hold that bonds until its maturity para makakuha ka ng contractual cash flows. Ano ba yung mga contractual cash flows? Contractual cash flows includes yung interest, no? Na prinamis sa'yo ng issuer ng bonds na yon, tsaka of course yung principal, no? In the event na mag-mature na yung bonds mo. So, yun yung mga contractual cash flow. So, if your intention is to hold that financial asset para makakolekta ng interest tsaka ng principal on a specified date, tapos, ang contractual cash flows na yon ay solely payments of the principal interest on the principal amount outstanding, then you can qualify, you can measure, you can classify the financial asset at amortized cost. So again, ang pinaka-importante dito na ito yung pinalo mo na ang business model na ginamit mo ay mag-hold ka ng financial asset with the intention of collecting, no, the interest plus the principal related to that particular investment. Now, what about debt investment at fair value through OCI? So again, class, no, usually pag mga debt investment, amortized cost yan. Pero there are also times wherein pwede natin siyang maklasify at fair value through other comprehensive income. So kailan yan? So PFRS 9 provides that a financial asset shall be measured at fair value through profit or loss if both of the following conditions are met. Una, ang business model is achieved by both collecting contractual cash flows and by selling the financial assets. So take note class, no, kung kanina sa amortized cost, the business model is only to collect contractual cash flows. Dito sa OCI, the business model is dalawa, no? Una, to collect contractual cash flows, and pangalawa, pwede ring ibenta niya yung financial assets niya. Plus, no, the contractual cash flows are solely payments of principals and interest on the principal amount outstanding. So this one is just the same with the amortized cost. So ang kaibahan lang talaga is dito, meron din siyang intention of selling the financial assets aside from yung pagkolekta ng contractual cash flows. So interest income is recognized using the effective interest method. And ito yung gagawin mo, no? And again, we will just discuss this further no pag napunta na tayo doon sa debt instruments naman or debt securities naman. So yung interest daw i-recognize using the effective interest method, and on the recognition, the cumulative gain or loss recognized in OCI shall be reclassified to profit or loss. So take note, ito magkaiba siya doon sa equity investment. Kasi 'di ba sa equity investment, hindi mo pwedeng i-reclassify yung accumulated na gain or loss no na naliko mo sa OCI, hindi siya pwedeng i-reclassify to profit or loss kapag equity instrument or kapag equity investment. However, kapag debt investment, posible siyang i-reclassify no yung cumulative gain or loss in OCI to profit or loss. So this one will be discussed further pa in the topic investment in bonds. Here is the summary of measurement rules for equity investments. Okay. We have here the type of investment and the measurement or the classification. So first is kapag held for trading, by requirement, it shall be measured at fair value through profit or loss. Kapag not held for trading, as a rule, fair value through profit or loss. However, merong irrevocable or merong option no, ang entity na i-measure ito at fair value through OCI by a revocable election. So at their option. Now, all other investments and quoted equity instruments, yung mga actively traded in the stock market, they shall be measured at fair value through profit or loss. Investments in unquoted equity security. So meaning hindi siya actively traded. So wala kang pagbabasehan sa market value or sa quoted price. So kung ganun, kung wala kang basis sa quoted price, then you are going to measure such investment at cost. So ito yung topic natin sa susunod na unit learning outcome sa ULOB. And then for investments of more than or 20% or more, but not more than 50%, we will be using the equity method of accounting. So ito siya class. This is yung tinatawag nating investment in associate, which is also another topic. No, in ULOC naman to. No, we will discuss this in ULOC. Investments of more than 50%. So ito yung tinatawag natin yung subsidiary na, no? Meron ng control talaga. So we use consolidation method, and this is a topic in your higher accounting na. Here are the summary of measurement rules no for investment naman in debt securities, no mga debt investments naman. So pag held for trading yung debt investment, as we know, it shall be measured at fair value through profit or loss. Kasi kapag held for trading, wala tayong option. But it is really required by the standard na i-measure mo siya at fair value through profit or loss. If it is held for collection of contractual cash flows, then you're going to measure it at amortized cost. However, meron kang option, no? If you're holding it for collection of contractual cash flows, you have to you have the option to measure it at fair value through profit or loss by a revocable election, or what we call the fair value option. If it is held for collection of contractual cash flows and for sale of financial asset, yung dalawa na, no, dalawa yung intention niya para makakolekta ng cash flows, tsaka yung mabenta ninyong financial asset, then it shall be measured at fair value through OCI. And lastly, if it is held for collection of contractual cash flows and for sale of financial assets, you also have no the option to measure it at fair value through profit or loss by a revocable election, or what we call yung fair value option. Okay, so those are the measurement rules no for debt investments. So let's try to apply, no? Kasi sa dami-dami ng ating mga diniscuss na concept, hindi natin ma-imagine kung paano natin siya i-apply in a problem solving, no? Or in a in a problem, no? Paano ba natin i-apply yung mga concept na sinasabi niya? Yung initial measurement, yung subsequent measurement, no, na sinasabi natin. Okay, so let's have first this illustration, no, related to trading securities. So on January 1, 2019, an entity purchased marketable equity securities for 5 billion. The entity or the equity securities qualify as financial asset held for trading. So take note, it's held for trading. The entity also paid 50,000 as commission to the broker. So what are we going to do, no? Of course, you have to record the transaction. So unang-una, paano natin siya i-record? So i-debit natin trading securities or financial asset at fair value through profit or loss or PVPL. That's 5 billion. Now, take note, 50,000 here is a transaction cost. Since this particular security here is classified as or as considered as held for trading, so dapat i-measure natin siya or i-classify natin siya as financial asset at fair value through profit or loss. And kung babalikan natin yung concept, sabi doon, kapag FVPL, ang transaction cost natin ay dapat i-expense outright natin. So, yan yung, ito yung ginawa natin. So, instead of capitalizing it, no, adding it to the cost of the trading securities, what we did is, i-debit natin siya sa commission expense at 50,000. So, separate siya, no, outright expense ito. Then, credit tayo ng cash at 5,050,000. Kapag naghihingi siya or kapag MCQ na questions, usually ang tanong ay, at what amount are you going to measure initially your trading securities? So of course, our answer for that will be 5 million. So based on the journal entry, no, yung answer natin as of January 1, 2019, we will have 5 million as our initial measurement for the trading securities. So just to illustrate, no, para ma-imagine nyo lang yung T-account. So magme-maintain tayo ng ledger for trading securities. So kung ipopost natin yan doon sa ledger, magde-debit tayo ng 5 million. So as of January 1, 2019, ang balanse ng trading securities natin ay 5 million. Now, pagdating ng December 31, 2019, the trading securities have a fair value of 6 million. Now, sabi natin, kasi trading security ito, dapat i-measure natin siya or i-classify natin siya as FVPL or fair value through profit or loss. So therefore, no, kung i-compare natin, kasi 'di ba kanina, ang balanse ng ating trading securities ay 5 million. So pagdating ng December 31, naging 6 million siya. So dapat, kasi financial assets at fair value through profit or loss. So ibig sabihin, dapat i-measure natin siya at fair value. And how much is the fair value nung December 31? Ang fair value ay 6 million. So dapat yung 5 million, gawin nating 6 million. So to record the increase in value, so ganito yung gagawin natin. I-debit natin ang trading securities or FVPL or fair value through profit or loss at 1 million. Saan galing yung 1 million? 1 million is 6 million, your market value sa December 31, minus the carrying amount as per record natin, you have 5 million. So there's a difference now of 1 million. So itong 1 million na to, i-debit natin to increase the value of our trading securities. And then, magka-credit tayo ng unrealized gain trading securities at 1 million. So, kung ito madadagdag sa ating carrying amount, no, sa ating trade securities, take note class that itong unrealized gain na to, trading securities na 1 million, this will be reported in your profit or loss. Or kung sa accounting 1 pa, 'di ba, i-report na to siya dito sa income statement. So appeal siya pag compute na to sa tuang profit. Okay. So looking at the account, so ganito yung mangyayari, 'di ba? Kasi Nag-debit tayo ng trading securities na 1 million. So, yung 5 million natin, madadagdagan siya ng 1 billion. So, as of December 31, 2019, ang i-report natin trading securities ay 6 million. So, usually, ang questions nito, basta MCQ is that um, magtatanong siya kung magkano yung balance ng trading securities at the end of December 31, 2019. And that would be, of course, 6 million. Another possible question sa MCQ is that magtatanong siya kung magkano yung i-report natin sa profit or loss na unrealized gain or loss. So, since this is financial asset at fair value through profit or loss, so itong unrealized gain na to, na 1 million, this will be reported to your profit or loss or yung sa income statement natin. So pag gumawa tayo ng income statement, itong unrealized gain na to ay i-include natin, no? Madadagdag siya doon sa ating pag-compute ng profit. And take note class na ang nature no ng account na to ay nominal siya. So ibig sabihin every time or every end of the reporting period maka-close siya or iki-close natin siya sa retained earnings in the case of corporation. No? So i-zero out natin ito. I-close natin siya kasi this is a temporary account. No? This is a nominal account. Since this is an item sa profit or loss statement. So, di ba take note, kung ma-remember ninyo sa basic accounting, gumawa tayo ng closing entries, lahat ng mga nominal accounts, no, usually lahat ng mga nag-appear na mga accounts doon sa income statement, di ba kino-close natin yon so that at the end of the accounting period, mazi-zero out sila. So, pagdating ng bagong accounting period, mag-start ka na naman mag-accumulate ng account na to. Na in case merong mga transactions affecting it. Okay, so now what if pagdating ng December 31, ang trading securities daw have a fair value of 4.5 billion. So magkano nga ba yun? From 6 million, ito yung 6 million natin, naging 4.5 million na lang. So anong nangyari, no? So ibig sabihin, bumaba ng 1,500,000 yung trading securities natin. So, yung 6 million natin, naging 4.5 million na lang. So, we have to decrease no, our trading securities by 1.5 million. And how are we going to record that? So, ito, i-debit natin ang realized loss trading securities at 1.5 million, credit trading securities or PVPL at 1.5 million. So ano nangyari? Yung trading securities natin bumaba. So that's why we are only reporting now 4.5 million. Tapos itong unrealized loss natin na 1.5 million, ito naman yung i-report natin sa profit or loss statement or sa income statement. So this time meron tayong loss. Okay? So now, what if noong December 31, 2021, yung per record natin, di ba, 4.5 million. So pagdating ng December 31, what if the trading securities are sold for 5.2 million? So, di ba, meron na tayong balanse na 4.5 billion. So, ibig sabihin, ibebenta natin ito at 5.2 million. So, if you're going to compare, no, kung titingnan natin, selling price niya ay 5.2 million. So compare mo yan dito sa kanyang carrying amount na 4.5. So there's a difference of 700,000. So that 700,000 is your realized gain. Kasi 'di ba binenta mo na. So meron kang gain on sale of trading securities amounting to 700,000, which is also an item of the profit or loss. So ito yung entry natin, debit tayo ng cash at 5.2 million. Credit tayo ng trading securities at or the PVPL at 4.5. So meaning ito, magke-credit tayo ng 4.5 million dito. So ibig sabihin, mazi-zero out na to kasi sold naman siya, no? Ma-zero na ni siya dire. And then mag-credit tayo ng gain on sale of trading securities. So that's for the first illustration. Let us now proceed to illustration number 2. So still this pertains to a trading security. So what if on January 1, 2019, an entity acquired trading securities at the following market value on December 31, 2019? So you have here the cost of the investments or the trading securities. You have four trading securities. Total cost of 5 million. Tapos pagdating ng December 31, ang kanyang market value, ang total ay naging 4.7 na lang. So there is a decrease of 300,000. So paano natin i-account yan? Okay, so you have here to record the acquisition on January 1. So ito yung entry natin. Debit tayo ng trading securities at 5 million. Ito, buo. Credit tayo ng cash at 5 million. Assuming na, of course, nabayad tayo ng cash. So this will be our posting ng iyong T account for the trading security. So you have a debit of 5 million. Now, pagdating ng December 31, 'di ba, bumaba yung market value. So take note dito, tingnan mo na lang ang total, no? Bumaba siya, no? Naging 4.7 na lang. There is a decrease amounting to 300,000. So paano natin i-record 'yan? Debit lang tayo ng unrealized loss, 300,000. Credit tayo ng trading securities, 300,000. So kung titinang natin ang ating trading securities, first you have a balance of 5 million minus 300,000 because of this entry. Ito, credit ka. So meron ka na lang balancing 4.7 which is equal equal ito doon sa market value na nireport mo. Which is shown in the problem. 4.7 na lang yung market value, which should be also the amount to be reported as of December 31, 2019. Now, what if on January 15, 2020, ABC preference share is sold for 80,000. So, nabenta natin yung 80,000. So, kung titingnan natin, ABC preference share, yung cost niya, 200,000 initially. Pero nung December 31, naging 150. So, take note that when you compare when you want to compute for the gain or loss, ng sale dito, tingnan natin yung latest natin na market value. Kasi 'di ba last valuation natin was on December 31. So, ibig sabihin, ito na yung balance na meron tayo as of January 15, 2020. I mean, yung last natin na valuation ay December 31, 2019. So, pagdating ng January 15, ang ating record ay 150 na yung preference share natin sa ABC. So, since nabenta lang siya at 80,000, ibig sabihin na lugi tayo ng 70,000. So, this is our entry. Nag-debit tayo ng cash, 80,000. Debit tayo ng loss on sale sa trading security. So again, paano ito na-compute? You have your carrying amount of 150 based sa market value in December 31 minus the selling price of 80,000. So nalugi tayo ng 70,000. Okay, so this is now the balance of your trading securities. So we ended here, di ba? 4.7 million. So since nakabenta tayo ng worth of 150,000, so ang ating natira na lang trading securities ay 4,550,000. To continue the illustration, what if on December 31, 2020, ito na yung mga carrying amount and market value of the securities na natira. So you have a total of 4,550,000. So this is naka-reconcile doon sa ating T account. And then yung market value natin, 4.9 million na. So kung titingnan natin, meron siyang increase in value amounting to 350,000. So paano natin i-record yung increase sa market value? So debit lang tayo ng trading securities at 350,000. Credit tayo ng unrealized gain na 350,000. So again, itong unrealized gain na to, marireport to as part of your profit or loss or income statement for the year 2020. So ito na yung magiging itsura ng ating trading securities as of December 31, 2020. So from 4,550,000, With this entry here, nag-debit tayo ng 350. So, pinost ko dito sa kanyang ledger or sa kanyang T account. So, yung balance niya is equivalent na dun sa ni-report na market value, which is 4.9 million. Okay, so those were the examples for trading securities. No? Kapag ang iyong investment ay na-classify as fair value through profit or loss. So punta naman tayo dito. So what if yung iyong investment, specifically equity investment, ay ma-classify as fair value through OCI? So we have here an illustration. So on January 1, 2019, an entity purchased marketable equity securities for 1 million. The entity paid 100,000 for commission and taxes, and the securities did not qualify as financial asset held for trading. So the entity made an irrevocable election to present unrealized gain and loss in other comprehensive income. Now, of course, no, ano yung entry na gagawin natin? So sa January 1, 2020, we have to recognize na the financial asset. So you have financial asset, FBOCI, at 1.1 million. O bakit 1.1 million? Na yung amount na lang ang purchase price ng marketable securities natin ay 1 million lang man. So take note, kung babalikan natin yung initial measurement, ang sabi doon, all financial assets shall be measured at fair value plus transaction cost, except lang if your financial asset is classified as fair value through profit or loss. So ito OCI man ito. So kung OCI siya, so that will be fair value of 1 million plus the transaction cost of 100,000. So that's why we're debiting here 1.1 million kasi we capitalize the 100,000 na commission and taxes. And then we credit cash. So this is now the account for your financial assets at fair value OCI. So FBOCI. Okay. Now, what if on December 31, 2019, the securities have a market value of 1.3? So ibig sabihin from 1.1 million naging 1.3 million siya. So there is an increase amounting to 200,000. So paano natin yan i-report? So debit tayo ng financial assets at fair value OCI, 200,000. Tapos credit tayo ng unrealized gain OCI at 200,000. So let me show you the T account. So ito na yung mangyayari, no? Your FV or FAFBOCI from 1.1 million kanina, dinagdagan natin ng 200,000 because of this entry. So magiging 1.3 na siya, no? Or 1,300,000. Now, let's talk about unrealized gain OCI. So ano bang kaibahan nito doon sa unrealized gain na trading securities? Kung yung unrealized gain related sa trading securities class ay nominal siya or temporary siya na account na every time mag-end ang accounting period, i-zero out mo siya, i-close mo siya, take note, itong unrealized gain, OCI, this is a real or permanent account. So, ibig sabihin, over or throughout the accounting periods, mag-accumulate siya, no? Cumulative siya. Hindi siya mako-close at the end of the accounting period. Okay? So, saan siya i-report? Itong unrealized gain OCI mo na 200,000, i-report siya as part of your comprehensive income statement or statement of comprehensive income. Again, if you can still recall, di ba, two parts yun. First part is the profit or loss. The second part is the OCI. So, itong unrealized gain na to, na 200,000, ito yung mapupunta doon sa other comprehensive income under the statement of comprehensive income. No? So, you have 200,000. So, mga changes yan sa asset na hindi naman dumaan doon sa profit or loss. So, doon natin siya ilagay sa OCI. Pero again, ang kaibahan nito is that this is a permanent account or a real account. So, anong ibig sabihin nun? Pag permanent or real account siya, pagka next accounting period, itong 200 na to, itong 200,000 na to, hindi to siya mawawala. So, it will be forwarded to the next accounting period. Okay, so tingnan natin ha sa next na year. So, yun, December 31, 2019. So ngayon, what if, no, pagka December 31, 2020, 1 year after, the securities have a market value naman of 1.6. So from 1.3 nung 2020, yung 2019, from 1.3 in 2019, naging 1.6 nung December 31, 2020. So there is an increase of 300,000. So paano natin i-record? So ito, debit tayo ng financial asset dash FVOCI, 300,000. Again, that's the difference between the market value now and the market value last year, since it is the amount na nung ato ang gi-recognize as carrying amount last year. So i-compare lang nato silang duha. So na ay difference na 300,000. So nag-increase ang market value of 300,000. So that's why we're debiting FVOCI or FAFVOCI at 300,000 and a credit to unrealized gain OCI at 300,000. Now, let's try to look at the T account. Okay. So, ito na yung magiging itsura ng FVOCI mo. So, di ba dito tayo last year, 1.3 million. So, because of this entry, itong entry kanina, nagdagdag tayo ng 300,000. So, naging 1.6 na siya. No? 1.6 million yung i-report natin as of December 31, 2020. Now, what about the unrealized gain OCI? Okay. So, anong nangyari? Itong 200,000, ito yung ating unrealized gain OCI na na-report last year. So this year, nadagdagan siya ng 300,000, no? Itong 300,000. So magkano yung cumulative na balanse? So that's 200,000 plus 300,000. As of December 31, 2020, meron ka ng balanse na 500,000 sa unrealized gain OCI. Okay, so see, it's a real account and it accumulates, no, over the accounting or over time na nag-accumulate siya, hindi siya mazi-zero out. Now, paano ang presentation nitong unrealized gain OCI? So take note class na sa itong statement of comprehensive income for December 31, 2020, what would appear is ito lang 300,000 kasi ito lang man yung changes for the year. No? So in your statement of comprehensive income under OCI, ang mag-a-appear ay yung 300,000. Pero sa yung statement of changes in equity, no, sa yung equity section class, ang mag-a-appear ay itong 500,000, yung cumulative na balanse. Okay, so usually manguta naman na ang problem, no, or manguta na kasagara sa MCQ, manguta na siya at how much should be reported as unrealized gain OCI in your statement of comprehensive income or in your OCI, no? Then the answer would be 300,000. Pero pag sinabi niya na how much will be the balance na i-report doon sa statement of changes in owner's equity or changes of statement of changes in shareholders' equity, then your answer would be 500,000. So, yun yung mag-a-appear doon sa iyong equity section. Yung cumulative na nabalanse. Okay, so let's proceed. Okay, what happened here? So, what if on July 31, 2020, the securities were sold at 2 million, no? Nabenta natin at 2 million. Now, since nabenta natin siya at 2 million, ano bang meron? Meron ba tayong gain or meron tayong loss? So, i-compare natin yung ating carrying amount natin ay 1.6 billion, di ba? So, kung ang ating selling price ay 2 million, ibig sabihin meron tayo supposedly ginansya or gain nga 400,000. But then take note that since this is FVOCI, hindi tayo pwedeng mag-recognize ng gain. Kasi 'di ba ang sabi doon, if you have irrevocably elected FVOCI, there's no way na yung changes in fair value ay ma-report sa profit or loss. So dapat ito tatandaan, no, na kapag FVOCI, for example, meron tayong sale dito supposedly naka-gain ka ng 400,000. Instead of crediting gain here, you should credit it immediately to retained earnings. Hindi na siya mapupunta sa gain. Kasi pag i-report mo siya as gain on sale, mapupunta yon or marireport yun sa profit or loss, of which hindi siya pwede per PFRS 9. Okay, I hope you're able to get that, no? Na kapag FVOCI, tapos nakabenta ka, and then it happened na merong somehow gain or loss supposedly, since the carrying amount is not equal to your selling price, no? Hindi tayo pwedeng mag-recognize ng gain. Instead, we have to credit kung mura siya gain to retained earnings, or kung mura siya loss, or kung meaning ang imong selling price mas gamay compared sa imuang carrying amount, then i-debit nimo ang retained earnings. So in our problem here, our selling price is greater than our carrying amount. So mura taog na ay gain nga 400,000. But instead of crediting gain on sale, we just credit it immediately to retained earnings. Kasi nga, ang ating classification sa financial asset natin ay fair value through OCI. So bawal mo report old amount or changes in fair value to your profit or loss. And it will not really be, it cannot be reclassified, no, from OCI to profit or loss. So that is why the second entry here, so since close naman itong financial assets FBOCI natin, since close na siya, zero na siya kasi binenta mo na, then yung anak niya na unrealized gain OCI, dapat i-close na rin natin. So, paano natin i-close? Ita-transfer lang natin siya sa retained earnings. So, debit tayo ng unrealized gain OCI, credit tayo ng retained earnings at 500,000 din. Okay, so ito yung magiging itsura niya. So, yung FBOCI mo, after the entry, after entry na to, ay mazi-zero out na siya. And your unrealized gain OCI, after this entry, yung second entry natin, nag-debit man tayo dito ng 500,000, mazi-zero na rin siya. No, kasi yung balance mo initially 500,000, tapos nag-debit tayo ng unrealized gain. Kasi transfer natin to retained earnings. So, mazi-zero out na rin yung unrealized gain natin. So, tama lang because sold naman yung ating financial asset, no? Classified as FBOCI. So, lahat ng mga accounts na related sa kanya, dapat tanggalin na rin. Okay, so let's proceed now to illustration number 4. So, still this is related to equity investments at fair value through OCI. So, again, no, unsa gayo itong mga timanan, pinakauna, pag FVOCI gali, initial measurement shall be fair value plus transaction cost. Subsequent measurement, you have fair value, tapos the changes is to be reported in your OCI, no, other comprehensive income. Okay, so let's have another illustration. You have on January 1, 2019, an entity purchased marketable equity securities for 2 million. The securities do not qualify as financial asset held for trading. So the entity elected to present changes in fair value in other comprehensive income. So the journal entry to record the acquisition is, so you just debit financial asset, FVOCI for 2 million. So walang transaction cost na binigay. So yan na yun. And then credit tayo ng cash na at 2 million. So ito yung ating T account na for that transaction. On December 31, 2019, the securities have a market value of 1.8. So bumaba, no, from 2 billion, naging 1.8 na lang. So to recognize the decrease in market value, so you just debit unrealized loss, OCI, at 200,000. Credit financial asset, FBOCI, at 200,000. So ito yung mangyayari. Yung 2 million natin, deduct natin yung 200,000. So magiging 1.8 na lang siya. Tapos for unrealized loss, OCI, meron kang debit na 200,000. No? So again, this is not a temporary account, but this is a permanent or real account which will accumulate in the next accounting period. So pagdating ng December 31, 2020, ang marketable ang securities daw have a market value na of 1.3. So from 1.8 bumaba pa, no? From 1.8 naging 1.3 pa. So ning decrease pa og 500,000. So to record the decrease, you debit unrealized loss 500,000, credit FAFBOCI for 500,000. So kung titingnan natin ang ating T account, yan, dito naman tayo last, di ba, 1.8. So with this entry here, crediting 500,000 na FVOCI, so ang matitira na lang is of course 1.3 million equivalent to the reported market value. Your unrealized loss, OCI, so yan, yung 200,000 natin na dagdagan ng 500. So yung outstanding balance ng unrealized loss OCI ay 700,000. Now, what if on July 1, nabenta natin yung securities natin for 1.2? So, from 1.3, you were able to sell it lang at 1.2. So, murakag na ay loss nga 100,000. And you look at the entry. We're not debiting loss on sale, but we are debiting retained earnings. Again, this is to apply the concept na sinabi doon sa PFRS 9 na hindi pwedeng mag-report ka sa profit or loss, no, for any changes in fair value kapag ang classification ng financial asset mo ay FVOCI. So, bawal yun, no? Tsaka, hindi pwede rin i-reverse from OCI to profit or loss. So, that is why we're just debiting it immediately to retained earnings at 100,000. Okay, then, since nabenta naman lahat yung kanyang securities, then tama lang at tanggalin na rin natin yung kanyang anak, no, na unrealized loss OCI na 700,000. So since naka-debit ito doon, no, sa T account natin, i-credit natin para ma-zero out. And you have to debit it to retained earnings. So if we'll try to look at the account of your FVOCI, so dito man tayo, 1.3. So with this entry here, you're crediting 1.3, so mazi-zero out na yung ating account. For the unrealized loss OCI, di ba 700,000 ito yon. So since nag-credit tayo dito ng unrealized loss, 700,000, so mazi-zero out na rin siya. So in that case, mawala na ato or ma-zero out na, ma-close na ang ato ang unrealized loss OCI. Okay, so I hope you are learning something. Let's go now to our last na illustration. So still related to equity investments at fair value through OCI. So on January 1, 2019, an entity acquired marketable equity securities not qualifying as financial asset held for trading. So hindi siya held for trading. So the entity elected to present changes in fair value as a component of other comprehensive income. So on December 31, 2019, the securities had the following cost and market value. So ito yung kanyang cost, 6 million, tsaka yung market value niya, 6.6 million. So kung titingnan natin, nag-increase ang kanyang market value by 600,000 pagdating ng December 31. So to record the acquisition on January 1, 2019, so you just debit FB or FAFBOCI at 6 million, credit cash at 6 million. So this is your T account. Next is to record the increase no, in market value no December 31. So you just debit FAFBOCI for 600,000 yung difference. And then you credit unrealized gain OCI at 600,000. So again, ito unrealized gain dito, this is cumulative, no? Hindi siya temporary or nominal account, but rather a permanent or real account, which will accumulate over the next accounting period. So ito yung ating T account. So meron na tayong balance na 6.6 million. Tapos yung unrealized gain OCI natin, meron tayong credit na 600,000. Pagka next year, on July 1, 2020, so what if security A was sold for 1.4 million? So nabenta siya at 1.4 million. So ang entry natin dito is ganito, no? Kung titingnan natin doon sa December 31, 2019, na record, di ba yung market value ng security A is 1.1 million. So ngayon, nabenta mo siya at 1.4. So somehow, parang meron kang gain no, na 300,000. Pero paano siya ini-record? So nag-debit ka ng cash kasi nakatanggap ka ng cash na 1.4. Credit mo yung FBOCI mo at 1.1 billion equivalent to the market value kasi ito na yung balanse. Ito yung carrying amount natin as of December 31, 2019. So yun yung naka-record natin or nasa record natin. So we are crediting FBOCI at 1.1 million and yung sobra na 300,000, i-credit natin siya sa retained earnings. Parang yung kinonsider natin as gain pero hindi siya pwedeng i-report as gain because bawal siya i-report sa profit or loss. So diretso na lang agad sa retained earnings. So since closed na yung FBOCI natin related to security A, no, hindi man lahat nabenta, ito lang man yung nabenta natin. So since closed na yan, dapat ang anak nitong security A, which is 100,000 nga gain, unrealized gain 100,000, it should also be closed na. No, tanggalin na natin siya sa records natin kasi nga ano naman siya, no? Nabenta mo na. So zero naman yung related to security A. So since unrealized gain ito, i-debit lang natin yung unrealized gain OCI natin ng 100,000. Then credit natin yung retained earnings at 100,000. So again, pag fair value through OCI, yung unrealized gain or loss natin kapag nabenta yung security or asset natin, dapat tanggalin na rin natin sa ating records. So ito na yung mangyayari, no? From 6.6 billion, dadidakan siya ng 1.1. Itong 1.1 million na to is yung sa security A. So ang natira na lang ay 5.5 million. For your unrealized gain naman, di ba initially meron tayong 600,000. So since nakabenta tayo, nag-debit tayo ng unrealized gain, so ang natira na lang ay 500,000. So dating ng December 31, 2020, ito na lang yung remaining securities. So security B and security C. So you have a total cost of 5.1 that is actually kanang equal doon sa ating na-report kanina sa T account. Ito, 5.5 million. Tapos, yung market value natin ay 6,250,000. So, there's an increase of 750,000. So, paano natin i-record ito? So, you just simply debit ng FB or FAFBOCI, 750,000, credit and realized gain, OCI, 750,000. So, ito na yung magiging itsura ng ating T account, no? FAFBOCI, so yung 5.5 million natin, dagdagan natin ng 750,000. So magiging 6,250,000 which is equivalent na to the market value here. Tapos yung T account natin sa unrealized gain. So from 500,000, dagdag lang natin yung 750,000. So magiging 125 or 1,250,000 yung unrealized gain OCI natin. So again ang usual na mga questions nito ay for example, mag-ask siya about magkano yung balanse ng financial asset at fair value OCI as of a certain date, for example, or cut-off. So alam na natin, no? Mag-refer tayo sa market value. Tapos posible rin ang question niya dito, for example, ito, question niya dito, how much unrealized gain OCI shall be reported to your statement of comprehensive income, specifically in other comprehensive income for the year 2020. So yung answer natin will be 750,000. 2020 ba ito? Oh yes, 2020. So for the year 2020, you'll have 750,000. Pero if yung question niya is magkano yung i-report mo sa statement of changes in equity or yung sa equity section, then that should be the cumulative balance, which is 1,250,000. So that will be all for this topic, class. I hope you learned something. I'll be giving you an activity to practice for this particular lesson. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.